The one-day workshop coincides with the 6th Annual World Conference of Science Journalists. Around 25 journalists from the developing world have been discussing how to improve reporting of the effects of climate change. They were addressed by scientists who set out the evidence for an increase in global warming caused by greenhouse gas emissions.
When you look at the climate system, you've got to look at the pattern. You mustn't look at the individual results. And if you look at the patterns, if you look at the pattern of ocean warming, the change in temperature of the surface layers of the ocean, if you look at the patterns of land temperature warming over the last 50 years, if you look at the behaviour of the glaciers of the world, if you look at the behaviour of the frozen ocean, the sea ice of the world, you see the pattern of human-induced global warming, and it's been progressing more rapidly than the science community thought that it would even 10, 15 years ago. All of that evidence has been building up over the last 20 years, and the science community has reviewed those data, and they have come forward and said, listen, we've got a serious problem.
By coincidence, as the workshop opened, a London newspaper was reporting the effects of a heat wave.
Here today on the front page of the Free newspaper here in London is a story on hospitals put on heat wave alert. If you read the story, there's nothing mentioned about climate change. Should there be something mentioned about climate change? If so, how should it be phrased? How do you make that link?
But scientists are wary of attributing individual events to the broader trends of climate change.
In southern Europe, we had a heat wave in 2003. We did some work where we ran models with and without greenhouse gases, and we looked at the change in probability of that heat wave occurring. And what we found is when you include the effect of greenhouse gases, that event was 2 to 4 times more likely to occur than it would have been without greenhouse gases. So all you can say is what the attributable risk is, the change in the attributable risk. That's more likely to occur because of increases in greenhouse gases. Now, of course, just from first principles looking forward, if it's going to get warmer, you're going to have more heat waves. But you can't attribute an individual event in that way. You can only look at the change of probability due to increases in greenhouse gases.
The effects of climate change, such as melting glaciers and rising sea levels, often have the greatest impact on developing countries, which is why journalists from those nations were keen to learn from the London workshop.
I really hope to know what's new, if there is something new that we don't know, and we can learn from the many diverse scientists coming here, and also how to be effective in our reports and try to impact the decision making in our countries, and all the journalists, how they can really have an impact on decision making, especially before the COP15 to be held in December in Copenhagen.
Organisers of the workshop said the message they wanted the journalists to take home was that it was not too late for effective action to be taken to reduce global warming.
It's not all doom and gloom, that we're in a very serious situation, but that there are real solutions, and that if information is provided to people, public and policymakers, that some action can be taken to address this problem. Because if everyone focuses on the scary stories, there'll be paralysis and nobody will do anything, and that will be a very serious problem.
The journalists were being given advice on how to humanise climate change stories and how to persuade editors and policymakers of their importance.